This is the Pro Perspective from House Pro, where home builders, designers, and industry experts share their views on running a modern firm.
If you've ever wondered how to command top dollar for your design services, you're not alone. In this episode, interior designer, product developer, author, and philanthropist Christopher Kennedy shares why he's passionate about pricing, along with the journey, insights, and actions that have helped him build a luxury design business and get paid what his time is worth. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Pro Perspective. I'm Liza Hausman, Vice President of Industry Marketing at House, and I'm so excited to welcome today Christopher Kennedy. Welcome, Christopher.
Hi, Liza. So good to be here.
Today, we are looking forward to hopefully a little bit of a spicy conversation about pricing. If folks aren't familiar, Christopher is an interior designer, product developer, author, philanthropist, has mid-century Palm Desert, Palm Springs focus, which is where he's based and what he's known for. And we're kind of excited to learn from you today, Christopher, about how you do business.
It's a big topic.
You're gonna be great, and folks are hungry for information. So I'm looking forward to talking about it. And when we talked earlier, I think one of the ways that we thought about pricing was it's really not just about setting a price, right? Sometimes people are like, oh, is it just how I structure my pricing, or is it just what I'm charging? And when we discussed, we thought, oh gosh, this is actually to do it right, or when you're thinking about pricing, there's really kind of a structure and three buckets that we came up with. One was sort of this idea of confidence behind your pricing, right?
Yeah.
Internalizing, that luxury clients expect and even want to pay more. And I think that we'll dive into that. The second area was kind of knowing your ideal client and setting expectations from the start. And the third was kind of that number part, right? Knowing your numbers and what you need to be a thriving business. So, in that vein of communicating confidence, wanted to hear a little bit from you about, how you define your value to the world as a professional designer.
Oh, just that? Just how do I define my value in the world?
Okay,
let's just start with the existential questions.
But...
Let's just dive right in. I mean, it definitely takes practice. I mean, it's hard for newcomers out the gate just to have confidence. I've been doing this for 20 years, to give you some background, and it took me a long time to get to where I'm at. And of course, we're still always, having to go back and rethink things and look at the numbers and look at our clients, as we'll talk about. I think when we really focus on the impact that we make in people's lives, I think, is how we can define our value as professionals, that we're not just drawing floor plans or, selling products, that we're really creating a big picture of how these people are going to live their best lives in their homes, probably their, biggest investment. So when we bring the value in terms of, I think, impact and creating a home that you love and a space that brings you joy and is set up to be organized and beautiful and to, function for your family, that's where you can really communicate. And that is what we do. I thoroughly believe that is what we do. And I think when we look at it in terms of end result and impact, then you can charge what you're worth. It goes beyond the hour it takes to draw a floor plan or the price of that land.
Right. Less executional and more that kind of big picture right there.
Yes.
They're looking to live a certain way.
Right? And then we're taking stress off of them. It's stressful to have your home not finished, that we're really providing a service that frees them up to do whatever it is that's important to them. If, they're retired, perhaps they're just doing, charity or golfing, or if they're raising their family, or if they're working, that this is a lot of work to create a home. And that is also very stressful. So when we're making their lives easier and better, that's priceless.
I 100% agree. And I think we could talk even a little bit more about that service aspect, because of course the value is the end result, and right, they want to get to that finished, but the process and the value that you provide in providing a good experience, right, for the process itself. Talk to me a little bit about that, because, folks have had good and bad experiences, right, going through these things. It makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, providing a good experience throughout the process. Obviously, in order to charge these fees, you have to have the processes in place and you have to have your act together. And while we're all creatives, unfortunately, the creativity part is probably sadly like 20% of our job, and the rest really is implementation. And when you're owning the business, it's the HR and the management and all those things that we didn't think about. Was like, oh, I just want to be an interior designer and make things pretty. So yeah, I mean, having your act together, having processes in place, and there's great tools these days that can help you do that. I mean, in terms of just, Zoom meetings and Google calendars and, templates you can buy online, we can get into that. I mean, you can buy emails that are pre-drafted for you. So you can really be a professional. There's all these Slack and Asana. There's so many ways to really have your processes in place. But that is an integral part of it. To create that seamless client experience is going to get you those testimonials and get you those referrals. When you do that for your clients and you implement it and you relieve the stress and you try to, I was in a meeting with a hotel client recently, and the GM, we just renovated 5 presidential suites, and we weren't the project manager. There was a project manager who was texting the manager at 6 a.m. and creating all this, kind of drama. And it didn't have to be that way. And it was kind of called out in the post project meeting. And I'm like, ooh, I'm glad, we weren't there. We're told that we make the process fun and as stress-free as possible. And I think that's part of our success.
So how do you communicate this value? Is it verbally or using your website? What are the ways that, what are the channels you have to get this message out there?
All of the above, I guess. I mean, these are such simple things and I need to hear them too. So to say that, you need to ask your client for a testimonial when the job is done, like, we know that we need to do these things, but we don't always do them. And they're simple to do, but not always just easy to implement, right? So we just get busy. So yeah, ask your client for referrals. Use that, You can have a really professional looking website these days. When I started 20 years ago, I had to hire someone to like create a website from scratch, like go in and do the coding, right? I mean, nowadays you can buy templates that are, pretty affordable that you can implement yourself. It's, technology has come so far that there's ways of making yourself look more established than maybe you feel if you're just starting out. Investing in photography, like we'll talk about. And I think you can hire a copywriter. I happen to be a pretty good writer, but all of our messaging is hopefully about that experience and how you feel in the house at the end.
That's interesting. So it's on the website. Is it in your proposal? Like, and what kind of conversations are you having with the clients? Kind of, again, I know they're obviously coming to you. They've seen your work, right? They think your work is beautiful, but they're not necessarily seeing the price at that time. So
they're not, and we got it better. It took me 20 years, 19, I guess now, to have a client services guide. So I've actually, well, from the very beginning, I always went to a meeting and I took a contract, and we had one contract and it was hourly, and I would take it. I had a really high closing rate. I was probably too cheap. That's a signal that I needed to raise my prices, but I just like to have that conversation up front. And so I would leave it. I said not to be high pressure, but just to be upfront, and I would leave the agreement. And more than half the time they would sign it and give me the check on the spot. Nowadays, we vet our clients a bit more, and we have a lovely little, I've heard them called investment guides. I happen to like to call it a client services guide. It was created in Canva, which is basically free, because nowadays you can, graphics are practically free nowadays. We used to hire graphic designers for $100 an hour. Now you can do that yourself in Canva. So it was made in Canva, and it gets emailed out to every prospect, and it says how much we charge. I mean, it's in there. It's lovely, along with a lot of pretty photos. We charge a price per square foot generally for a design. We have an investment minimum, and those things are disclosed. So I think it's just important to get on the same page really quickly and to not waste your time or the prospect's time.
You seem pretty confident now. Have you always been this confident? And have you always had, what were some of the things that kind of triggered your thinking around pricing?
Can I tell you a story? And back in, I guess, 2019, a couple from Seattle. She was VP of sales for like a big financial services firm, bought a house in Palm Springs, full price, first day. It was remodeled, and and I met her actually socially. She bought it in March. I met her socially over the holidays, and she said she loved my work and wanted to hire me one day. And, if I had a nickel every time I'd heard that, I'd have a bigger house. But she actually did come back. She did buy a house, and she did hire me. She hired us in April. And I had just started doing a price per square foot pricing. And at the time, this is in 2019, in the spring, I was charging $4 a square foot for design. Now, keep in mind, our homes in Palm Springs are not huge. This was a mid-century house. It's maybe 3,000 square feet. So my total fee was like $12,000. and she probably spent about 150,000 on merchandise, maybe 200,000. And we did it over the summer. We did the big reveal in the fall. She said that it was the second best day of her life, only to her wedding day. Again, this goes back to that experience. She said
Wow.
everything from like our warehouse to our project management to our weekly email reports, made it really stress-free. We do the big reveal, talk about that experience. It's not unlike you see on TV. I think it makes things better for everybody. We really do focus on that big reveal. We have champagne if the clients indulge, or coffee or tea. We have the charcuterie board, and really make it a whole experience. And after we were all done, she had me over for a glass of champagne over the next winter holidays and said, Christopher, now that we're done and we're friends, I can tell you, you need to double to triple your fee. So when your client tells you that, I guess it's saying something. She said, I thought you were going to charge me at least double. She said, I would have paid triple. I wouldn't have slept for one night, but I would have known it was worth it and I would have paid it. So I'm like, okay. And she is very smart. She's in sales. She said, people to some degree expect that they're getting what they pay for. And at a luxury level, honestly, when you have money, isn't it kind of fun to spend it? Frankly, people like, when you've got money, it's fun to spend money, and people that have money like to spend it. And our ideal clients have resources, and they're used to, they don't drive the cheapest car. They don't carry the cheapest bag. They don't wear the plainest shoes. Like, it's a bit of a status switch. Like, they often kind of expect and want to pay more. There's an assumption that they're getting what they pay for, Those shoes with the red bottoms might not be actually any more quality than ones that don't have those red bottoms, but there's an assumption that they do because they're more expensive, right? So she said, you will get more and better clients when you raise your fee. And she was absolutely right.
That's super interesting because it's essentially a signal, right? If you're
It is
going
a
in with
signal.
too low a fee,
Yeah.
they're thinking this isn't this
Something's
isn't
wrong.
going to be a
Right. What's wrong?
luxury,
He needs the
right?
money. What's wrong? Like, if it's too low, it signals you the other way. Absolutely. I think part of that messaging is I'm in Facebook groups and I see these things and I think when designers, well, this is about confidence. I can save that thought if you want. So I guess having that confidence to know, and I remember the first time I went to charge a bigger fee, it's like, I was a little nervous. And so part of the reason sometimes we express our fee as a price per square foot, our fee is now $12. It has been tripled. I like to be fully disclosure. I hate going to a panel and four experts were up there talking about fees and don't tell you what they charge. So I'm an open book. I think we just have to communicate as an industry, and a sidebar is that I think consumers are confused because as an industry, we're not at all standardized. I know we're never going to be. We're not like the realtors who got together and fixed their fees and often charge more than we do on a project. When the realtor is making more money, not to say that
Right.
realtors don't work hard. They do. I mean, they do. But they're probably not in it for a year or two like we are, doing every detail. So we're never going to be standardized, but the more we can sort of talk about it, the more consistent all the players get, I think, and the more, the rising tide raises all ships. So consumers are confused because we don't have it standardized. But back to Common, as I was saying, when we now charge a price per square foot, if for any reason I do stutter, like when you have that internalized fear, you don't have to do the math. You don't have to say, I'm charging you $60,000 or whatever. You can let them do the math. Okay, he charges this much, and they can do it. If you're uncomfortable saying that number, like I have been, we let them
Here's
do
my
it.
fee,
I
right? We
think
don't.
people are accustomed to a price per square foot. We price tile on a price per square foot. Homes are assessed at value often as a, what do you pay per square foot? So I think it's something
But
clients to, and it's
it's
easy.
also nice because it ties it to the amount of work that has to be done, right? The
Yes.
nice thing about using that square foot number is
Yeah.
it gives some meat to where, how you come up with the
Yeah.
fee, right? So
Yeah.
in some ways it is a very transparent kind of open book number because you're like, okay, in our experience, right? It's tied
Yeah.
to how much house we
Yes.
have to,
Right.
right? We have to
Yes.
work on.
Yeah.
And that's
And then
logical.
transparency, so we also charge hourly for project management. So the design is the price per square foot. And then often, we're doing big remodels and things. So like project management, site visits, all those things sort of tied to construction are charged hourly at $75 an hour.
And do you estimate them up front? Do you know from the size of the
No,
project? Nope. So
we don't.
folks,
No.
okay.
If we ever do charge an hourly, which sometimes we do, yes, because my problem with hourly is you're kind of punished for being efficient, right? And for having experience. And it's hard to say, okay, how do I charge for the fact that, sales reps come and see me and bring me the new spring fabrics, that I go to a trade show to do sourcing. Like, there's all these things that we're doing that bring value to the project that we're not doing singularly hourly just for that client. And then when you charge hourly, what's the next thing they ask? Well, how many hours is it going to be?
Exactly.
Every time, every
Okay.
client I've had, they're going to ask that. So you kind of have to get to that total number either way. So whether you do it
Okay.
up front, I mean, almost every client now says, well, how many hours is it going to take? So we do generally have a range when it's hourly, if we ever charge hourly, just so that they kind of know what they're getting into. That's only fair for both parties. Yeah.
So the project management piece is, I
But
understand
we
kind of what
don't
you're,
estimate that hourly, but if we ever do our design fee hourly, which we do sometimes,
I see.
still when a client requests, like we're doing one like commercial job now and they really want it hourly and it's out of town, it's in Orange County, so there's travel. But yeah, we're giving them an estimate up front of a range.
So you give them a design fee and you give them a project management fee.
Yes.
Got it. That makes sense. So you mentioned this idea of the ideal client. Tell me, like, how does that fit into your process, and how should designers, think about defining and, identifying their ideal client? Why is it important?
I think it's important to realize that we are a luxury service. I think it's important to acknowledge, at least for the world I live in, that we're not for everybody. It costs a lot of money. It just does. It's a luxury service. And I think owning that to yourself and your firm is going to help you be more successful, help you serve the clients that you're best at serving. When you look at these magazines or you look at people's websites, like, it's a lot of money that goes into these rooms, right? If you're building a new house, it's incredibly expensive. So I think kind of accepting that and owning that is really important, and messaging it. Like, I see Facebook groups and designers are like, oh, my messaging is about, I split my discount with them or I save them money. I think that's the wrong message. I do think that we bring value, and I think that we help people avoid mistakes. And I think that, do we save them money in that regard? Yes. Do I think that that's the message we should be sending? I think it's about maybe value and avoiding mistakes. I don't really think that we're saving people money. Like, we're a luxury service. I think we should own that. And it costs a lot of money, whether it's just the shipping, the storage, the receiving, the art installation. Like, it's a lot of money. And I think adding that up and looking at, when you to define your ideal client, to answer your question, I think, look at the room, look at what your project, if it's 1 year, you've been in business 20 years, look at the projects you are most proud of, the ones that you want to put on your website and on Instagram, look at what those cost and realize, okay, that's where I want to be. And we should be messaging to those. Where did that client live? What did they drive? What country club did they go to? And then really target that and then communicate to that person.
I love that you're saying out loud, right? Like, you got to acknowledge this is a luxury service, right? This is something to do when you have a lot of disposable income, because again, hiring someone to help with this is not inexpensive. And
It's
so,
not. I mean, years ago, because we live in a resort town, and sometimes we get asked about doing vacation rentals. And this is probably well over 5 years ago, but my husband just went in because someone thought they could do their 3-bedroom, or maybe balked when I said, okay, your 3-bedroom vacation house or Airbnb is going to, cost $100,000 to furnish. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, my husband went onto westelm.com and made a shopping cart. And by the way, West Elm sells mattresses and they sell drapery panels and, 2 pieces of art for every room and a rug. And it's like, and that's a great exercise. If you haven't done it for yourself, or if you want to make a spreadsheet for clients, like, just furnishing an average 3-bedroom house, soup to nuts, it adds up really, really fast.
yeah, and your time is money. It
And
was
then
interesting
you have
when,
the time, and then
right.
You're not doing
It was
you're not
interesting when you were
assembling that furniture.
talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting when you were sort of listing out, the art installation, kind of all these pieces.
All the same.
How often, do clients ask about what goes into a project, and do you have a discussion where kind of the detail of the work that you or the team is doing comes up?
It's a good question. I guess we say that we're full service. Our services guide kind of, when I was worried about my fee, honestly, it has like a page where it's like, in little tiny print, like, these are all the decisions that we're making for you. Like if it's new construction, I mean, we sat down one night, I think over happy hour, if you know me, like, it was like, okay, it's the door hinges, it's the cabinet hardware. Like you don't realize that. I've seen a couple high-end designers on Instagram lately that are like, it was a reel and it was like, in this one kitchen, how many decisions were made? And they kind of, then all the decisions popped up on the, like on the reel. And I'm like, that was brilliant. It was like 30 decisions in this one photo, when you realize how much work goes into it. So we do occasionally, our service guy kind of shows how many decisions are made. And now when we do our merchandise proposal, we kind of upfront put a range or a budget for like the inbound shipping, which has gotten 15% nowadays, and the receiving and storage and the delivery and installation. So we do budget that up front with the merchandise. We used to like bill it at the end, and then it's like get this huge bill and we haven't collected the money. So like we're fronting the cash flow, which is a bad idea too. So yeah, we collect all that up front now.
So it's in terms of setting client expectations, which it seems like is sort of the key to having things go well down the road.
Yeah.
You've got a few key tools. Yeah.
We're pretty upfront now that like our minimum furnishings and decor investments, $250,000. So that's sort of our threshold. If you want Christopher Kennedy to come into this project, like that's where we start. And I had to send 2 emails last night with a services guide where like we had inquiries. We do have a little online form on our website that lets people inquire, and and it asks like how much they want to spend, and they want us to do like 1 or 2 rooms, and it's like we just don't really do 1 or 2 rooms. I never have. And nothing wrong with that. If you're starting out, by all means, I'm not saying I'm above it. Since I started 20 years ago, I live in a resort town. Even when I was doing 2-bedroom brand new condos, like people didn't have anything. They were moving. It was a second or third home. It was a vacation home. So we do kind of live in a different bubble, I realize, but we really only do whole houses.
Yeah. But I think the key part of that is you're anchoring them, right? They know what that minimum is. It's interesting because I'm listening to a book on negotiating right now, and people may come in, like they might come in thinking, okay, this is going to be $100,000, right? And when you come back with a totally different, you're sort of re-anchoring them to a different place with some information about why, right? Like, oh, well, just the furnishings alone is going to cost $1,000, let alone our, time and effort and the project management and everything else associated with it. But it's such a great way, I think. You're doing the luxury signal, I think, which keeps you up there, but also you're getting people to rethink.
What makes me crazy about the industry is when I've heard designer chatter on whatever Facebook groups, and they're like, oh, and someone asks what it's going to cost. The client's, well, that depends. I don't know. I can't tell you. And it's like, then we're just bad business people. I mean, honestly, if we can't go into a first discovery meeting and tell someone to the nearest $10,000, like what this is going to be, like, we're just bad business people, and it's not doing anyone any good. And if you don't have any idea, then go back to what I said earlier, like, okay, look at a living room that you're most proud of and look at what that costs, and just say, like, we should be able to tell someone, if you want our look and you liked what you saw in this photograph, this room or this house, this living room was $50,000, or this whole project was $1 million. Like, I mean, we should be able to do that. And as designers and architects, if we can't do that, then we really need to look at our business practices. It almost borders on malpractice to me to say, well, it depends what you want. Well, it does. If they want to go onto Amazon and buy all the furniture, then they're not your client anyway. So we should be able to tell a prospect who's even within, at least in our world, like to some degree, what this costs.
Yeah, to know what's typical. When you work with me, here's what's typical, right?
And you can say what's typical.
Right. And I think referring, one of the techniques that I've heard a lot of people use, and even outside of interior design, whether it's construction, et cetera, is to show them another project. Okay, here's a project similar to yours. This is what it costs to do.
Absolutely. And I don't think I think to ask them what they want to spend, like, well, also makes me crazy when clients don't know. Like when the client comes and says, oh, I don't know. It's like, well, they do. They have a number in their head. It's like they didn't go to their realtor and say, show me everything from $200,000 to $2 million, right? You don't go to the car dealership and look at everything from a Hyundai to a Bentley. You know that you're going to buy a Mercedes, or you have a range. And I think it's not the client's job to always know what things cost. They have an idea of what they want to spend. But we're the professionals. We know what things cost, and they don't often know. And I don't think that's their fault. I think it's our fault as an industry for not saying, hey, you like what you saw in El Decor. Those people spend $1 million on furniture, in that project. I think we need to be better at educating them about what things cost.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think, to your point about the lack of standardization, I think what
Yeah.
it does is it gives people the impression that it's a negotiable
Oh, that's it.
service, right? I
Mhm.
think that's the biggest thing. So, what one of the things you're doing with your approach is like, this is not a negotiable, this is not a negotiable
It's
service. This is
an
right.
architect taught me something once that, and not a lot of clients have negotiated, but a few have. And an architect, I think, like at a conference one time, told me, he said he had one client who asked for a negotiation or asked for a discount, and his response was, "I have 12 clients right now, all paying me my standard fee. Do you really want to be the one in 12 who is paying a discount? Like, who's going to get my best service? Whose email am I going to answer first? Whose phone call am I going to return first?" Like, oh yeah, like doesn't know. That was one way to put it. I tend to say something more like, it really wouldn't be fair to my other clients who are paying my going rate if I offered you a discount. And if someone wants, I've seen some good advice. If someone wants to pay less, then you need to remove scope of service. Okay, I could maybe do this for less, but you're not still getting A through Z. You're getting A through L. But that's hard for me to do because we do full service. But I think it is a good thing to do. If someone wants to pay less, then they need to get less. If you're
Yeah.
going to negotiate, then you need to remove
Right.
things from scope.
I'm not changing my effective hourly
No,
rate, right?
right.
Like I'm not going to make less for my time.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that comes into it is I'm here to help you make the best choices, right? You're doing a
Yeah.
home, you've got a kid's room. Sure, we're not going to put, we're going to put durable things, right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot that we're going to do to help make this, there's sort of a total cost of ownership piece here long term, but
Yeah.
like, right, this has got to work for you. You don't want to redo this in 5 years. You don't want to, get something that's not good quality, that, right? Like
Mhm.
we're putting things in place that are going to let you live in this home for right years
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
years and hold
Right.
up, etc. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's sort of something to expanding the conversation between like, hey, what it's part of that. What are you getting for your money, right? You're
It is.
gonna
I think if you called any of our clients, they say that we're actually a bit practical. Like, even though we're serving luxury, we're not buying the most expensive of everything. We're not putting in, all Holly Hunt furniture, or all design center. Like, it's a mix. I don't want to say a mix of high and low, but yeah, I mean, if I can, find something at West Elm that works in the guest room, I'm going to mix that and, spend more money over here. It's about being smart with the overall investment. And no, we're not just, I mean, our clients, even if they have all the money in the world, they don't want everything to be the most expensive thing in their vacation home. They have kids and grandkids and dogs, and it has to be practical, as you said. And it is about a mix and, knowing where to spend, the money for the bang for the buck. I use that term a lot. Like, okay, we're going to put it over here. I might buy the, $300 a yard fabric for the pillow. That's what everyone sees, but buy the, affordable fabric for the whole sofa. It's about, yeah, the overall total investment and being smart with it. And once they know that you're being smart with their money, I think things relax a lot.
And I think that's another great aspect of setting the expectations, right? Of
Mhm.
you having that conversation, right? That they probably have money because they made smart financial
Yes.
choices, right?
Yeah,
And to just
that's
throw
right.
it on the most
That's right.
expensive thing every time. And
Mhm.
so I think sometimes it's about, right, that given that mentality, you're like, okay,
Mhm.
this is gonna be a luxury experience, you're gonna get what you want,
Mhm.
but we're smart, right? We're making smart
Yeah,
choices. We have you in
yeah,
mind when we're making these choices.
I do. And what I found is when you're serving a luxury client, and what's so great and freeing is like when you get to that level and you are speaking to those clients, they're the easiest, honestly. Like the people that have the money that really, it's so much more relaxed. It's the ones who are a bit stretching, who maybe can't afford you, where they really have that stress. In my experience, the people that have the resources are accustomed to hiring professionals in other areas of their life. So they listen to your advice. They're not second guessing everything because they're accustomed to hiring, attorneys and CPAs and other professionals, and they take their advice. So they're accustomed to paying professionals for their advice. They don't second guess it. They make quick decisions because they're running companies, they're running businesses. They make quick decisions, and they're dream clients. Like they're really, when you get to that level, it's honestly, you'd think they'd almost be more demanding, but I find that they have high expectations and you have to perform, but I think they're less demanding on a day-to-day basis. They kind of just set back. Once you get the budget established, once you sort of sell the vision, they're like, great, do it. This is what you do. call me when it's ready. I mean, that's a little bit much. We keep them informed, but they're not second guessing everything. They're not sending me 10 texts a day. They're not out shopping at Home Goods. Hey, how about this lamp? No, they're not doing that. They're out running their lives and their businesses and turning it over to you as a professional.
Which is a great situation to be in. Do you still take on those stretch clients? And if so, how do you deal with them?
That's a good question. I guess less and less. Yeah. And my team reminds me, and it's like, I don't know, it's, the small projects they're just the hardest. I don't know how to, it's just a rule of life. And I guess, and then there's sort of no room for mistakes, which happen. It's like, because they do when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of moving parts, like something's going to go wrong. And so we have to be able to absorb that without stress. It's like less and less, because it's energy and time, and it's really hard. And it's hard when you are running a business and have a payroll to like turn down that immediate $10 and wait for the $100. But it's I believe in woo woo and like law of attraction and all that. And it's like you do have to free up that space and allow the right project and client to come in the door. But it's hard to say when you have payroll next week. It is. I fully acknowledge.
Yeah. No, you do. I mean, you see a lot of designer discussions about the regret of that.
Oh yeah,
that project that you knew was going to be a nightmare.
If I had any advice, it's about when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Or when your gut is telling you this is a bad fit. Generally, I think listening to your gut's my key advice. Is like, if you think that paint color is too red, it probably is. If you have a bad feeling about that project, that client, listen to it. And every time I've not listened to my gut, I've regretted it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I can make this work. If a client comes to you and like interviewed 3 or 4 other designers and didn't go with them, or if they come to you in a first meeting talking bad about their other designers, it's like there's probably a reason that they're not working together. And I think generally designers are just, we're pretty good people, and we're not the greedy ones. We do this because we love it, and that's why we don't always make enough money, because we do it for free, and we do it for free. Generally, we're not the greedy assholes out there, generally. So I think if someone's had a bad experience with designers, it's really, you have to ask if this person's a good fit for any designer.
Makes sense. And certainly, right, that the early meeting is going to be the honeymoon, right? That's the best. That's the best it's going to get. So if that's bad, it's unlikely to get maybe
if it's hard to get the contract signed, exactly. Yes, right. It's not going to get better. It's not going to get less stressful. You're right.
Yeah, red flags. Was there, or what was the point in time when you felt like the business was finally shifting from that investment period where you're taking on projects to necessarily make the most money at, but you're building your portfolio, to, feeling like, okay, I've shifted into the phase where taking on just what I want to do?
It kind of was recently. And talking about pricing, I mean, something that I believe in is, can we as an industry stop using the word markup? It makes me absolutely insane. Like, it just sounds like something that's, willy-nilly, that we're just charging a markup for no reason on top of the retail cost. Like, it makes me crazy. And it makes me crazy that clients think that they can ask us our profit margin. And like, they can ask for like our cost on an item and want to see the markup. Like, what other industry allows that? No, you don't go to Starbucks and ask how much the beans cost and the cup cost and the green apron. You just pay $6 for the cup.
It's not a negotiation. Yeah,
it's not a negotiation. And no, Howard Schultz isn't disclosing his profit margin. It's crazy. We have to stop as an industry allowing that. It's none of their business what something costs. And so what did shift, and my husband, I think, is listing my business partner, is when we started charging reasonable retail for pricing. So again, because we're transparent, we sell merchandise, we sell everything in the house, and we sell it in more or less retail. And I like to use the word like reasonable retail pricing. When I first started, I came from a very high-end firm. You've never heard his name. There's a lot of great designers that you've never heard of because their clients are private and they've never published. But his average project 20 years ago was $1 million in furniture, and it was all design center level. It was all, Pacific Design Center, D&D in New York. So, every sofa is $15,000, and he was adding a 35% markup to that. That was standard back before the internet, and 20 years ago was a 35% markup in the industry. But that was a different time. And so when I opened my doors, I was adding 35%, but I wasn't buying everything from Holly Hunt and Dongia and Ralph Pucci. We're selling, retail brands like Arteriors and Bernhardt and Forehands, and adding 35% doesn't make any sense. You can't make a living. So when we said, okay, And when clients ask us, we're going to sell you that at kind of reasonable retail. And so generally we're kind of matching the price that someone sees online. We're not promising it to them less. I will say if we are saving someone money on an item, we'll show that, like we have a itemized proposal, and if our purchasing power is enough that we're coming in $25 below the MSRP, we're going to show that on our proposal to them on our price invoice. But no, we're just charging a reasonable retail, and depending on our purchasing power, we might have a 50% margin on some things and 100% on another, and it just kind of washes out, and the client's paying a fair price. But no, they don't get to know our gross profit margin. That's none of their business. So a shift definitely happened when we stopped saying, okay, I'm going to add 40% markup, again, I hate that word, to this Arterials lamp when the retail's 2.5, 250% markup. It doesn't, so I think designers can make more money the minute they shift to charging reasonable retail and stop splitting their discounts or pretending that it's doing anyone a service to. It's only saving that client money. Like if the client can go on Paragold and buy that lamp for $900, then that's what you should be selling it to them for. If you're buying it at wholesale, why should it be less? And you're doing a service. You're handling it for them.
Exactly. Yes.
It should really be more. It should be more. But yeah, so we charge. So it really shifted when we just started charging retail pricing for the merchandise.
It's perfectly reasonable. And so why do you think it's such a difficult conversation between designers and clients, and what can they what can they change about the dynamic?
I think it's a difficult internal conversation.
Okay.
I don't think I will, because as an industry, we've allowed this thing of like, oh, you designer get discount. Shouldn't I get your discount? Well, no, I get a discount for my loyalty. It's really a incentive to purchase from this company because I'm a good customer. It's not for you, Mr. Homeowner.
I do multiple projects. You're not doing multiple projects.
It's not, we don't get discounts. We get preferred pricing because of the volume that we do. We're not getting a discount for no reason. Like, sure, if we want to walk into RH they don't even give designer discounts anymore because they have their member pricing. So like, sure, is there a time that if a client goes into a store and I can get 15% off with a phone call, do I let them for one item? Sure, it's just a feel good. Generally, no, but our clients aren't out shopping. That's our job. They want us to handle it for them. So I think it's difficult because as an industry, we've allowed it and we've encouraged it that we're saving people money by passing on our discounts. That's why it's hard. The minute that we say, this is how we do things, no, you don't, but you don't get our discount, then it'll go away. And our clients don't push back. They shouldn't buy it through us for less than they can buy at the store. No.
Right. But it's also the important reason that the design fee and the project management fee is separate from the products, right? Because, this whole idea of like, I'm being shopped, well, that doesn't happen if you're right. It doesn't happen.
I think that you communicate value and you establish a budget for the whole thing. One way, if a client, and we don't really promise that they're paying the cheapest price. I mean, I don't often have to have the conversation, but might I have to say, sure, on like Black Friday, if you want, might you image search this one lamp and pay $100 less? You might. But in general, you are paying a fair price. It's within the number we've agreed upon, and they don't complain. So they're not shopping each and every single thing. And if the client's doing that to you, they're not your ideal client. Or just say, hey, are we coming in on budget for this room? Yeah, well then what's the problem? But we're also being very fair. We're not overcharging them, but we're also not promising them that on any given day, they're paying the absolute cheapest price for that one coffee table, that one lamp.
But again, I think this comes back to, this is a luxury service. Like,
yes, right.
Here's
the total that we've kind of agreed upon up front. We know that we're going to be spending about this much money. We've come in on budget. You've seen that everything is in general a fair price. Just do it. Just move on. And it's a luxury service. Yeah, we're not promising to be the cheapest. No.
So as designers are sort of developing their pricing, maybe it's still they're doing a range of different types of projects. Like, do you recommend that they start with hourly and then get to sort of flat fees once they have a better sense? What's a sensible progression as you're developing your business and moving maybe more up market?
I think a flat fee is more sensible. I guess I'm jaded. I just think First of all, I'm terrible at tracking my hours. I'm really bad about it. So it just takes a lot more time. There's a lot more, back end work that goes into it, tracking it, keying it into whatever software you're using, sending that invoice. So I think in general, we're probably not good at it. When we get into our zone of genius and our magic spot, we're just, time is passing quickly. We're not looking at the clock when we're having fun. I think having a flat fee, I would probably recommend that over hourly. I just think it's easier. I think you communicate the value up front. Billing is easier, like either just charge, so we have a flat fee. We either take, 25% up front or 50 or whatever. And then, over the next quarter, the next 6 months, it's just, whatever, 4 equal payments. It's done. The client knows it's easy. So I would probably be a fan of the flat fee.
And do they, I guess, get to that number by, just coming up with an estimation of the hours? Like, what's the safe way to do that? Because I know folks would say, like, what if I end up losing money? This ends up being the crazy project. How do I put
You have to know,
boundaries on it?
Depending on the team that you have and like what you're delivering, if you're delivering really, really detailed CAD drawings and elevations, you need to look at what that costs and who you're paying to do that. And we're always evaluating that internally. I mean, in general, I would just say, I think what people are probably charging for new construction, I think they're charging at least $20 a square foot. That was a few years, probably more like $25 a square foot. We're charging $12 to $14 for merchant, for like furnishings and decor only. I would think no one's probably charging less than 6 to 10. And again, it could depend on the size. If you're doing a really big house and there's just big public hallways that don't require, as much thought, then sure, that can, massage, look at the whole number. I think, and just like when you buy a house, the smaller the house is, the higher it is per square foot, right? Look at how many hours. And I think, again, I started making way more money when I began doing a flat fee because we're pretty good at our jobs. Like, we're pretty fast. We've been doing this for 20 years. Like, honestly, I would never be making what I'm making now if I just charge hourly. I wouldn't be able to. I would never log enough hours to make the value that we bring to the project.
And I know, folks shouldn't share necessarily their profit margin, but like, what is a reasonable range for designers? Like, as they're running their numbers, like, what should they be making?
I mean, I saw something like the average, interior designers making like $45,000 a year or something. I think that's way too low. It's not hard to get, gross profit, to get a 6-figure furniture project. I mean, it took me years to get to, multiple 7 figures, but that's where we're at. And that's doable. I think when you're charging fees and you're selling the merchandise, you can make money. You can absolutely, there's plenty of designers making good money.
Don't feel bad about it. Yeah.
Don't feel bad about it. You're worth it. You are worth it.
I love it. So this has been like amazing advice. I think people would love to just have a little fun, maybe some fun info about you.
This wasn't fun?
About you personally. So this was super fun. And it's great to see how passionate you are about this. And I think it served you well. Actually, there was one other question I wanted to ask you, which is, how do you know it's time to update your pricing? Like,
well, if you're me, your client flat out tells you. Yeah. I mean, it was slapped across my face, but no one said I was a quick learner. But I did one time, a mentor years ago, James Magny, great interior designer in LA. He taught me, if your clients aren't complaining about your bills, you're probably not charging enough. It's like, okay. And I've rarely had a client complain. You should constantly be looking at it. You should constantly be looking at your payroll. And, if we're good business people, we would look at the end of a project and look at, how much you made, how many hours do you think you actually spent? If you're outsourcing CAD or drafting perhaps, or even internally, how many hours did that team member, whether they're remote or internal, spend on that? So I think kind of doing a postmortem on the project and looking at, was this profitable enough? And if not, then look at, do we need to increase it?
I think that makes sense. I do agree. Yeah, every year, and looking at the project level is important, and just seeing, like, did my receiver costs go up? Like, there are things that can, really affect.
I mean, we hadn't raised our price, but everything is going up. People are raising their prices, and then for us, it was looking at, okay, how can we make more money on the client we already have? So, like, we're purchasing a lot more of the materials that we're specifying. We don't contract. I know there are designers like Michael Smith, who's clearly makes a lot of money, that if he specifies it, he sells it to the client. We don't contract that, but we started getting into, okay, why shouldn't we sell them the tile? Why shouldn't we sell them the plumbing fixtures? So we're making more money just by kind of being more full service, and they're going to spend that money. The thing is, if the client's hiring you, hopefully they like you, right? Hopefully you're a good person, you're having fun. They want you to be successful. Like they would rather spend money with you than at big box store that they don't know. So like, why not? And it makes their life easier. So, and you have more control over the project. So we're now generally like, we're purchasing the plumbing fixtures to make sure that it's what we want, to make sure that we know it's here. We're purchasing the tiles, like we are doing more full service. So again, it's taking stress off of the client and we have more control over the project and we're making more money. It's like this great win-win-win. And on those things, we'll just charge, 20% like a standard GC would, and no one's questioning it. But 20% on a house full of plumbing fixtures that you're specifying anyway, that I'm creating cut sheets for anyway, like it. So make more money doing the things you're already doing and serving the clients you're already serving. We don't sell appliances, full disclosure. We just that I'm like, I don't, we don't need to sell the appliances. We just go to whatever, Ferguson or
go to the appliance store, yeah.
Write it up and let them get the miles on their credit card and everyone's happy. But yeah, when in generally we looked at why aren't we selling these things that we're specifying?
That's smart. Kind of take a look at the opportunities.
Right. Why should you turn it over to a tile guy to make 20% on $50,000 worth of tile that he didn't do anything for? He didn't do it.
Right. You're doing the work anyway.
We're doing the work anyway. Yeah. I don't know if that relates to anything.
No, that was. I love that.
I think it's good. Look at making more money. Yeah, it's just, and it's really a win-win. The clients love it when they see it, that they just have everything handled for them.
Yeah. Well, you clearly love what you do. What inspires you?
Oh, geez. What inspires me? I mean, the big reveal, like when, you get that call from a client. I mean, I had a client move in last week to her house and like, she texted me on Saturday morning and was like, oh, just, waking up here. It was just so beautiful. And thank you. So I think when we do our jobs right, we really are impacting people's lives. And that really does inspire me. And sometimes it's easy to forget, like, when you're in the nitty gritty or you've like demoed a client's house and you're walking in and it looks like a war zone and you're looking around, it's like, what the heck have we done? But I think that inspires me. And I just freeing up that time. Like I've been a little bit too stressed the last few weeks and years. And like, when there is so much implementation that goes into it, that the more clients you're serving, the more projects you're taking on, because they're smaller, it just really is like soul sucking and time sucking. And our clients are hiring us often they're hiring us for our zone of genius and our creativity. They don't realize they're hiring us to also execute it, but it takes time to get into that zone, right? Like the thing I struggle with is I know there's studies on this, like it just takes time to get your head around a project and to do what they're actually hiring us for, to be creative. It takes kind of hours to transition out of like email and text and like, let me just sit down and think about what should, Mrs. Jones' living room look like. Like that's such an amazing opportunity that they're giving to us, that it just takes like kind of having that white space, whether that's, turning off the email or going for a hike or just saying, I'm going to be in my studio surrounded by the fabrics that I love. And like, let's just brainstorm what this house should look like. Not trying to answer your question. So I guess what inspires me is trying to like give myself some more space to be creative. And whatever that looks like for you, if that's hiking or meditation or walking your dog, and then, getting into that zone of genius. But I think it takes white space.
That makes a lot of sense. So kind of at a similar vein, you were mentioning the high levels of stress. What do you do to decompress?
I work out now. I took like 10 years off and didn't exercise, which I don't advise. I go to like small group personal training, which I have like gym friends now. So that's fun. So actually working out, of course, we all know that just gives you endorphins and make you happy. So I exercise now. I don't watch, people always assume I watch HGTV or something. I've been on HGTV, but I don't watch it. I guess when I come home after a long day at work, that's like work. I watch stupid stuff. I watch anything but home design shows, Hallmark movies, or whatever.
No, I totally feel you.
If I'm watching TV, I'm not watching design or real estate shows. Be with my dog, be with friends. Palm Springs is beautiful. Go for hikes. Yeah. Drink a little wine.
Lovely place.
Just all the usual stuff. Yeah.
Any favorite bad habits?
Bad habits. Chocolate. Ben and Jerry's. Half baked or the tonight dough, if you must know. Yeah.
That sounds great. I will confess, I think I ate a half gallon of Tillamook mudslide last week
There
to
you go.
cope with everything. So
We
we're
all
we're
needed it.
we're good. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's
all
all about
good.
balance, right? So we need to indulge for sure now and then. It's okay.
100%. Well, Christopher, thank you so much. This was an incredible conversation. I think things are gonna love, love,
I
love
hope it
every
was
minute of it.
helpful. I hope it was helpful. Feel free to write to yeah, you guys out there. If you ever need support, just DM me on Instagram or email me. I will back you up. I'll remind you of your worth. We are worth it. We are not overcharging. We are delivering amazing results for our clients, and we're worth every penny. And don't forget
You're
it.
gonna go. You're gonna go into like coaching and positive like
Maybe.
things if you're for
Things
your
like this are
second
perfect.
career. So
Yeah,
yes, you're so good.
thank
Wonderful.
you.
All right. Thanks so much.
It was really
Take
fun.
care.
Thank you, Liza.
Bye.
This series is brought to you by House Pro. To learn more about our best-in-class software for winning clients, managing projects, and simplifying your workflow, visit house.com/pro.